Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. We're here to break down a little bit from the game last weekend or last Thursday against the Patriots. We haven't spoken since then. We'll spend a little bit of time on that at the end of the show, but we're going to focus on the Jets, maybe the Dolphins here toward the end of the show, as well as maybe some updates around Odell Beckham Jr. and other league news. We'll be right back at you right here on the Going Deep podcast.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw, and it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action.
Woo,
Deep downfield, wide open.
Mike, what a great Thursday here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the Going Deep podcast here on the Cover One Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Masseri, here with Mike Bunt to break down a lot to do with the Jets game today. We want to talk this great rematch. Will the Bills have it in them to get over the top and finally put the Jets to bed and maybe end their season? We were hoping to have Ty Rauch on here from Let's Talk Jets. He was unable to make it today, so it's just going to be us talking Jets in this preview show, as well as talk a little bit about what we like from the Patriots game. Can't go a whole show without bringing up the Dolphins here at the end, Mike, as well as, it's the Going Deep podcast. So that means Odell Beckham Jr. is going to have to come up here at some point. But we're going to start at the top with what's on fold. A Sunday, a 1:00 game that by all accounts was supposed to be flexed. But reporter Connor Rogers out of New York said that the Bills Jets were the preferred flex. And then CBS protected it and went to the Dolphins Chargers. But Mike, first and foremost, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have a show where the Bills are the top team in the AFC currently, a lot better than sitting in that top wild card spot like the Bills have been the last couple of weeks. We've been doing this. Kansas City, thank you for losing to Cincinnati. I got to thank you, Cincy, for defeating Kansas City. And then thank you, San Fran, for taking care of business against Miami. Now everything is front of the Bills. They control their own destiny. It's not going to be easy, but if you would have told me after 12 games, 9-3, first place in the AFC, I would have taken it. So
yeah, I guess you got into it. Let's real quickly recap. Like you mentioned, the Bengals did end up getting it done there at the end of the game against the Chiefs. We also had the 49ers go ahead and with their third string quarterback, Brock Purdy, were able to knock off the Dolphins. Tua looked horrible. Warner was able to take away the middle of the field. Tua had a poor performance all game around. Looking forward to seeing Milano and Edmonds on the field this time against the Dolphins defense or offense next week. But all that being said, the Bills are in first place now. They are tied with the Chiefs atop of the AFC, and obviously the Bills have the tiebreaker to be in the one spot right now. I think we should save some time at the end as well before we talk about the Dolphins to kind of think what going forward and how we could see this one seed playing out. But we got to get there first, Mike. We got to get there. We're still 5 weeks away. There's still plenty of time. You want to talk seeding? I had a tweet up just yesterday, 2 days ago, that the Bills actually lose the tiebreaker to the Miami Dolphins in all tiebreaker situations. So you do need to finish ahead of them in the standings. That's the number one thing to be aware of. You can't assume that you can be tied with them. You can't, lose a couple of games here. Even if you beat the Dolphins, you need to make sure you're one game above the Dolphins going forward. But to get there, they have to take care of the Jets, Mike.
Yeah, got to take it 1 week at a time. Jets are not going to be an easy opponent, as we know from earlier this season. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. The spread says that the Bills should win this game comfortably, but the lines from Vegas also said that the Bills should have defeated Minnesota comfortably and the Jets the first time around. So I'm not going to take anything for granted at this point. Mike White, a little bit better than having Zach Wilson in there for New York. So that is an upgrade for them. So Bills are going to have to come prepared, and I think they will this Sunday.
Yeah, and Is and prepared they will be in a game that I don't know. I think they got bit last time they played. They went down to MetLife. I mean, I guess struggled in stretches offensively at times. I don't think Zach Wilson was the reason that team was
That
able
was a
to win
healthy
that
Josh
game.
Allen. That was the last time Josh Allen was completely healthy before. I assume he's probably pretty close to full. Well,
10 days.
Who knows where he's really at, but it sounds like he's close to being where he needs to be. But that Jets defense gave the Bills tons of trouble the last time these two teams played, and they've been doing that all year. So it seems like even when New York has been below average in recent years, they've always found a way to keep these games closer than what you would expect going in. So it's a matchup that it is going to present some difficulties on Sunday.
Yeah, and they have a few injuries themselves. They're still missing Mekhi Becton. They're still without obviously Breece Hall. We talked about last time with Ty. They're still without Elijah Vera Tucker, who's still injured as well. Michael Carter, their nickelback, a cornerback, is hurt. Ashton Davis, one of their good strong safeties, is hurt. So it's a little bit banged up of a Jets team. One that, I mean, the Bills went ahead and ended the Mike White experiment last year, which was fun. He got a little bit banged up right before the Bills game and then went in and then had a poor performance against Buffalo, ending that one pretty handedly to end that experiment. So I don't think that the Bills are very concerned with the Jets offense. Now we saw a little bit from Bam Knight. He was running really well. He's a practice squad running back who's taken over for Michael Carter, obviously Breece Hall. Did jump James Robinson and Ty Johnston on the depth charts as well for them. So a guy that gave a little bit of a boost as a college free agent there. But we saw Braxton Berrios drop a slant route in the end zone to lose the game against the Vikings. In a game where I don't believe their defense played very well at all, stiffened up a little bit in the fourth quarter toward the end of the game. And then actually Mike White was pretty poor throughout most of the day. And then actually kind of conversely played pretty well in the fourth quarter. So he played well and his defense played well when he was bad and his defense was bad for the majority of the day. So we'll see if they're able to keep that fourth quarter energy going. But it's not something that I totally see. But Mike, what's an interesting note here? And I want to hear you talk about this. Total defensive DVOA, 5th for the Jets, 4th for the Bills. So it's close.
That is the crazy part about this is we keep talking up a lot of these defenses that the Bills go up against. Last week, New England, this week, the Jets. But the Bills defense is right there with all of them. And we all know how great the Bills defense is. Statistically, they've shown it the last few years, outside of one of the last 5 years. They've been a top overall, top tier defense. But I feel like they're not getting the respect that they deserve in certain areas. You look at Pro Football Focus right now, and I know these grades are all about the people that they have watching each play and grading each individual play. Pro Football Focus has the Bills with the 15th ranked defense in the NFL. You have to wonder, what the heck are they watching where you have the Bills that low overall? We know that Buffalo struggles sometimes with tackling, but outside of tackling, they find a way to stop the run. They have been solid in their secondary for the most part early in the year. Yes, they've had a couple recent games before New England where they had a few struggles against number one receivers. But when healthy, when Tremaine and Milano are in there, this Bills defense is elite. So I think you're right. The Bills shouldn't be overly concerned about the Jets offense. It's more so, will the Bills be able to put up the points that they need to take care of business against this Jets defense? The last time that they played the Jets was one of Josh Allen's worst games in the last couple seasons. He didn't throw a touchdown, had 2 interceptions, including the first one where didn't even see a defender on Knox. He did rush for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns, but that was a game that Josh really just could never find it. And the Bills did have a double-digit lead late in the second quarter. So it was one of those where the Jets kind of just started controlling the clock, running the ball effectively, and before you know it, that last minute field goal just won them the game, and the Bills didn't have an answer.
Yeah, no, we'll start there. Any news on Dawkins to kind of kick this off? Nothing immediately. It did seem like it was shorter term by all accounts. It wasn't a high ankle sprain. 10 days should help. We'll see tomorrow officially where he is. I'm expecting him to be in the lineup. I'm expecting most of the play. I don't think I have anything that says that anyone should be out. I think Sean McDermott said yesterday, everyone's trending in the right directions. Signing CJ Brewer as a defensive tackle to the roster with the open spot that could just be for insurance, but that doesn't necessarily bode extremely well for Jordan Phillips and his AC joint trying to dive for Mac Jones. They're kind of at the end of the game meaninglessly to close out that game. So we'll see if that's the lone kind of player out. I think the Bills could obviously, get through without Jordan Phillips on a 1 week basis. So we'll see where all that turns out. And the offensive line should come in healthy, and the Bills should be healthy across the board. And that leads me to the next point, the Kaiir Elam point, scratched. By all accounts, a healthy inactive. I'm sure this has been talked about much on pods. So we won't get into like the game scheme too much of it, but more on a high level, Mike. It does scream to me like, and then Dane Jackson was sick. It's interesting to the point where Dane Jackson was healthy enough to be active and play like half the series, but was still sick. You had Kaiir Elam not on the injury report, but couldn't suit up.
I don't think we ever really got much clarity about that as well. There was sources from reporters on Twitter saying that it was a benching for Kaiir Elam, that it wasn't injury related or due to anything he was going through. So that was interesting. Just the whole situation was a little bit of a head scratcher, but it worked out. The Bills defense obviously did their job outside of one long early touchdown that they allowed. The secondary played great. The Patriots did nothing offensively against the Bills. So whatever the Bills were doing going into the game with those decisions, it worked out. But got to wonder how they move forward from this and how they're going to handle that secondary, because there are a lot of different ways with the experience they have that they could go.
Yeah, appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much, Robert Lee, for chatting in. As always, please smash the like button here as we get to Robert's question. Frazier and McDermott really do fly under the radar for how this D has performed with as many starters out, missed time at various points. They deserve kudos. Absolutely. I think I said this earlier on in the season, especially when they beat Kansas City, without Trey Roy, without Micah Hyde, without some of their key players in the lineup. The defense just balled, and they were still able, with Christian Benford, Taron Johnson obviously had the game-sealing interception. They have played very, very well, as Mike said earlier, still impressively in fourth in DVOA defensively, although we like to complain. They had a little issue with the run for their first stretch back to the Jets game. They had a little bit of issue with the pass back to the Vikings-Lions game. So there's been those stretches of each of faltering. They've since corrected the run game mightily, in my opinion. We don't really know where they're at with the DBs because it was Mac Jones. They played really well last week. They get a good test this week, a pretty moderate test this week with Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson.
And I do want to talk about this defense as well. All year, you always talk about who are the most important players on defense. Sometimes it's the most skilled player. Sometimes it's a certain position. I think we've started to learn who are the irreplaceable players on this team. And you start with Jordan Poyer. Poyer, when he is on the field, the Bills are a completely different team than when he's off the field. Obviously, Micah Hyde, equally important, but the Bills defense can still get by when one of them is off the field. When they're both off the field, this defense has an array of problems they're dealing with. And I think you can say the same thing about this linebacking core. A lot of people look at linebacker as the running back of the defense, a position that's easily replaceable where you can just put some random people in and be okay. That is not the case with Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano. They work so well in tandem and have such high skill sets with their ability to clog lanes, be able to play well in pass coverage, and all the unique things that they bring to the table, that when either one of them is out, the whole defense feels that much more vulnerable. One guy I actually am less worried about being out than what I think the national media and what the majority Bills fans is actually Von Miller. Von Miller is a future Hall of Famer. He is one of the best pass rushers in the history of the game. But if you ask me, can the Bills get by 2 or 3 games without Von Miller? My answer is yes. They have quality players, quality edge rushers. And then you look at the interior line, they have quality interior players as well with Ed Oliver. What makes Von so great is that in the big moments, he makes plays. He's clutch. He adds that clutch factor where against Kansas City, he got those sacks in moments that ended drives that helped you finish games. And against the Kansas Cities, against those unstoppable offenses, that's when I think you need a Von Miller.
Yeah.
I don't think the Bills need Von Miller against the New York Jets. I could even make an argument. I think the Bills could get by Miami Dolphins without Von Miller and the Chicago Bears without Von Miller. So I like the point by Roy right here. We need a healthy Von for the playoffs. That's where I'm at. Get him healthy as much as he can. So when you do go up against a team like KC, if they do have a rematch, he can give you that timely sack. But overall on the defense, I think Poyer being out or Tremaine being out makes a bigger impact on a week-to-week basis for the Bills than a Von, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I get the point. I mean, I'd always want, if cleared, my players to play. That goes, even down to Micah Hyde. If this
100%.
if this is actually realistic with his neck and he gets cleared and the player wants to play, which is part of it, which most, not all, but most players would probably want to play. That checks the boxes for me to not be overly conservative. Now, I don't want to rush players on the field after concussions, none of that kind of stuff. But I'm saying that if a player is cleared medically from his facility, from his doctors, the team doctors, and then mentally he's ready to play, I want that player to play. Now, back to the Von situation, I'd like Von Miller to play if he's ready. What was interesting was he was on his live stream saying, I expect to play for the Jets game, which does tell me, Mike, the Bills made a conservative decision, which I'm fine with. Bean said himself, there was no setback, nothing wrong with the 7-day imaging, none of that stuff. I'm sure we'll hear more this week as well, or maybe if not this week, soon on some of those 7 to 10 day rest was the original, like we have to see after 7 to 10 days. So for me, I want to see Von come back and be healthy and be ready for the Bengals. I don't want the thing about the 4 weeks though. I don't want this 3-week ramp up. I don't want this game shape. I don't want there's not time for that. You got the Bengals, you have the Patriots. If you don't get the 1 seed and you're the 2 or even the 3, doesn't really matter. You have the Dolphins or you have the Chargers or even the Jets. Really, it could be any of those 3 sitting in the 6 or the 7 spot, if not the Ravens. So there's a couple of, I think the Bengals, Raven, that's going to be an interesting battle too. So it's not great where he would need an extra amount of time to ramp up. So that's to me, like I always err on like him being ready. Now the Trey White situation got to a situation where he was sitting out multiple weeks, past the 4 weeks almost. He was taking up a roster spot at that point. So there is that like different, like they're 2 different sides of the coin. But Von himself,
my bad, Kev. You
no, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say Von himself saying he's ready to go is what kind of sparked my interest in like, I think he's gonna be as good as he's gonna be. The Bills said, well, we'd still like you to rest it and have a lower incident of a problem.
Yeah, and Von's always going to be an optimist with his situation. And good for him for wanting to get back out there, help his team as soon as possible. But the Bills also have a responsibility to look out for his long-term health. It does seem like it's an injury that he's going to have to just battle through with the brace, and that he's going to have to obviously get the repair once the offseason begins. So it's going to be something where what percentage health are we going to see Von even when he does come back? What type of impact will that be? I think that's all up in the air. It's something that he's dealt with before, playing with a brace, but obviously at an older age right now than in the past. The conservative view by the Bills with these injuries is something they've been consistent with all season long. It's a reason why the news today coming out about Odell Beckham Jr. really changed my approach with everything. And if you're okay with talking about it right now, we will talk about the Jets game. But I do want to talk about the news with Odell Beckham Jr. Everyone thought after the visits to the Giants, the Bills, the Cowboys, that we could get a decision today. Doesn't appear like that's going to be the case. And what I find so interesting is the 180 that we have seen from the Dallas Cowboys in the last 24 hours.
Weird.
For the first 3 months of the season, first 2 months of the season, it was all Von trying to recruit OBJ, telling Bills fans, well, he's going to be ready for December and he can help out the Bills. And I was all on board with that. I was 100% on board. I thought, okay, he'll sign a cheap contract, try to win a Super Bowl, then he'll go out in free agency and do his thing. Starting in November, Dallas Cowboys get in the conversation. They're recruiting him actively. Then the New York Giants entered the conversation. I never really believed all that smoke, but he ended up going to New York to visit. For the past 3-4 weeks, the national media has all been about the Dallas Cowboys are the favorites. It's going to be the Cowboys or the Giants, and the Bills were still in it, but that you weren't hearing them really be discussed. The fact that Jerry Jones went from being all aboard OBJ, and then today you hear the news that the Cowboys don't think he'll be available before the end of the regular season, and that the best case scenario is that they think he could play in the postseason. That means one of two things to me. One, they actually truly believe that OBJ is a lot further away from playing than what they originally thought. Or B, they don't think they're in the running for him based on what money would be or other things that would be involved in negotiations. And they're trying to let down their fan base as nicely as possible. So if he does sign with another team, they can say, well, we don't want him anyway. He has an ACL issue that he's still rehabbing and he's not going to be ready for the playoffs. But I feel like if he was truly at the point where he was only a few weeks away and could play in games in the beginning of January, I believe Jerry Jones would have done anything to try to acquire him. So I am inclined to think he is further away than what most of us thought the previous couple months. And I don't think it's likely that he's going to end up playing this season. Not saying the Bills can't go after him, not saying that it's impossible, but I do think today's news does change how fans should think about the whole chase for OBJ.
Interesting, though, is like it didn't leak from New York. It was being courted. It didn't leak from Buffalo. I don't know. It seems to me like he got there and Jerry Jones is a little bit upset that he was expecting this guy who he's going to give 10, 15, 20 plus $1 million, depending on how much guaranteed, didn't work out. And he felt kind of chapped about it. And they're spending time and money and energy courting him. And he wants all the proof in the world that he's going to come back and be Super Bowl OBJ. And he didn't get that. Now, I do think there's definitely some injury concerns. We just watched Trey take exactly 12 months to the day from injury. And we had Josina Anderson go on and really refute that fact, which is kind of his camp, I believe. So
that's what you have going on right now. You have Dallas's word against OBJ's word. But one thing that you can take from that Josina Anderson tweet, and I saw Thad Brown actually point this out. In the tweet, it says Odell Beckham Jr.'s camp thinks he's several weeks of ramp up away.
I thought that, though.
Several weeks of ramp up is a very broad way of putting it. Is that 2 or 3 weeks? Is that 5 or 6 weeks? If you're talking about 4 to 6 weeks of ramp up, there's no situation where the Bills should sign him if the first time he's going to touch the field is in a playoff game. I am not putting an Odell Beckham Jr. on the field that doesn't see a regular season game first. I don't. It'd be one thing if he was coming off a more basic injury. He's coming off an ACL. I don't believe that's a guy that you just insert in a postseason lineup, give him 65% of the snaps, and call him your number 3 target. I don't like that idea. So I am more inclined, if that is the case, to waiting till free agency. And what I more so think this might be, if the news today is accurate, is I'm almost wondering, did OBJ try to leverage teams that were hoping to contend, that needed some receiver help? Did he try to leverage selling the hope of being a potential difference maker for a stretch run into a multi-year deal that he didn't think would be possible otherwise? Because the question is, if he knows he's not going to play for the rest of the year, then he could obviously just wait until free agency next year. But he's trying to get that money now. So it is interesting. I don't see how the whole point for the Bills pursuing him was to make a Super Bowl run. Do you even think that's possible at this point? Not the Super Bowl run, but him being a part of it.
I don't think it's just posturing for a contract, no, because that ruins his reputation, that ruins his agent's reputation. You're talking to contending teams that you'd want to sign with, whether it's long-term 1 year or in free agency. You're talking about your old team in the Giants with people that know him. You're talking about Von Miller, who knows him. So either they're running a pretty big like Duke job and he's fooling his old friends and in situations, or it's not posturing and he's like, well, I'm still not going to work out yet. I think that's news that might affect his overall money, which is interesting on a Bills call it. Von said earlier on his cast, and I tweeted this, that Von had said that OBJ told him that it was down between the Cowboys and the Bills. Presumably, if Jerry Jones isn't happy with the no workout and all these things are leaking through Jerry Jones, let's be honest, that would leave it down to the Bills. Now, if the Bills pass, you could see a conceivable situation to where maybe he goes back to New York or waits it out. But I do believe that he is ready to play at some point this season. I believe that the Bills doctors are smart enough for that. I do believe that anyone that signs him this year, unless there's no signing, then fine. Then he was not ready. If even the Giants, Bills, Cowboys, or someone else jumps in, it wouldn't be the Ravens at this point. I guess the Chiefs could come out of something from nowhere. They're still on the list of short teams. I think that the player's ready to play. No one's giving him a multi-year deal here without using 2 weeks plus the playoffs.
So I guess the question is, if OBJ isn't in the equation for this year, could it be the Bills realistically just want to have him for next year, or
sure,
maybe
on a discount too?
On the line, and they are, because I will say, when I heard he wasn't going to work out for the Giants, Bills, or Cowboys, that was a red flag to me. You're coming off a serious ACL injury. It's the second major injury that you've had in your career. You're looking for a multi-year deal. You keep telling people you're looking for a home that you're going to settle down in that place for a couple years, and you're reportedly seeking $20 million a year. Let's be real, that's not going to happen, but that's a lot of money and then a lot of risk for teams to invest in you without even seeing you work out. So to me, the non-workout was a red flag. I am assuming that due to Von Miller's relationship with OBJ, that Von has probably been feeding the Bills information. They probably had an idea where he was at in his rehab. I did listen to Sean McDermott speak to Rich Eisen about the OBJ situation, and he was kind of non-answering most of the things, but he did say that they were comfortable with him coming to Buffalo, not working out. They know where he's at with his timetable and everything. So that was a little bit different than what Jerry Jones came out saying. So the Bills' interest is legitimate, whether they know he's going to be able to play this year or not. The Bills do want OBJ, whatever scenario they have in mind for him. We'll just have to wait and see. I do think the circus is getting a little bit ridiculous at this point. I don't blame OBJ for the entirety of it. I understand him wanting to have some fun. It probably feels great to be recruited again.
Yeah, it's not his fault.
Yeah, he probably hasn't really felt this way since college.
What's he doing wrong? Yeah.
So, have some fun with it. And so I don't blame him for the entirety of it, but I do think he is dragging this a little bit at this point. He's obviously had fun with all three fan bases on Twitter. He has been engaging with a lot of people and enjoying the process. But I do think it is time, if he does plan on going to one of these three teams, I do think it is time for him to make a decision if there's offers on the table coming up shortly, because I think all three of these fan bases are going to go crazy if they don't hear something one way or another soon.
I think that it's conceivable that he plays this year. I really think that. And will he play 400-yard games? I don't know. But I think it's conceivable that he's a team's second, third, or fourth receiver this season. I don't think it's outlandish by any stretch of the imagination. I expected him to be on Vaughn's timeline. I expected him to play like more toward the end of the season. So these multiple weeks in a system doesn't affect me at all. And I don't think it's outlandish for a team either. So let's say he can't play. Let's go down that road. I don't think it's outlandish for a team to eat some of the cap this year, extend out the contract, get a better deal now than you might when he's full, working out, 7 teams interested, more cap space, cap goes up. It's a shrewd business move by Brandon Beane or by anyone to sign him now to 3-year deal for half the price. I don't think it's crazy situation.
They can definitely make it work. The money is not a worry. And we've been talking to Greg about this. Obviously, the Bills a lot of fans look at the Bills salary cap situation and they're like, how are they going to have the money to fit him in? It's more than manageable. Brandon Beane knows how to work the cap. Greg has gone over a bunch of different scenarios with us about how the Bills can get OBJ what he's looking for while really not losing a ton at their expense. If they sign an OBJ, you're probably saying goodbye to a Jordan Poyer and probably Devin Singletary as well. But those are both guys that, with Poyer at least, most likely was walking anyway. And then Singletary, you couldn't blame him if he did decide to explore the free agent market. But even if you bring in a guy like OBJ, you still have the ability to re-sign Tremaine Edmonds and make offer to try to keep Ed Oliver long term. So going after him does not cost you a ton. Obviously, if losing Poyer, that would suck. But I think you and I, maybe more so we haven't really talked about it a ton in person. I've kind of come to terms that this is probably the last year Poyer will be on the Bills.
Yeah, I'm back and forth all the time on that topic on Poyer, and I think Greg's going to do. We'll see if I'm able to jump in to do a cap special. So we'll kind of tie Poyer in with that cap special on the Cover One Podcast Network with the restructures. What are they going to do with Edmonds? A couple of those scenarios. Yeah, you can absolutely sign Odell Beckham Jr. and put him on IR. That would be what a team would do. So say the Bills, they would eat one of those 3 years of the contract. So the best thing is prorated. So if he signs for the last 4 weeks of the season, a team's only paying him, 1/5 of what's left on say it's a $20 million deal. And then that's 1 year right there. And then they're getting him, a lot of that bonus money's eaten up. They're able to pay him next year for a pretty reasonable amount and then have some void years at some point. So there is a way that it makes sense to consider your future team and maybe get him back for a playoff run as well as a side bonus. So it isn't totally lost. And I believe the Bills are thinking, the Bills are always playing chess with the cap, especially. And I believe that if the Bills sign him, the Bills have a really strong plan. It isn't just like a herky-jerky, let me get him in the system, because I think he's going to go for 400 yards against the Bengals. I think that there's a long-term plan by Brandon Beane when he's playing chess with the cap and getting a wide receiver 2 in the system all offseason at a much reduced rate. So that's my opinion. And I still believe you will see him suit up this season as a huge boost for teams that have no film on him in that specific offense. There could be a boost there for him coming in and playing 50% snaps. No one's saying he's going to play 99% of the snaps, but him coming in and playing 50% of snaps week 17, week 18, and all of a sudden be immersed in your offense. So I do think that that's still a possibility for him going forward with OBJ. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But I do believe him leaving Dallas, there's some smoke there that Jerry Jones is probably already positioning to not sign him. Might be good news for the Bills to go ahead and maybe be someone that was more serious with him. So it's going to be a pretty fun couple of days on where he ends up signing. But I do believe he ends up picking a situation here in the next day or two.
And just final thought, what do you think was the changing factor for Jerry Jones in Dallas? Because in the tweet that was released, it said the Cowboys have the thought process that he's not ready because he didn't work out for them. Now, it also said they didn't expect him to work out for them. So they didn't expect him to work out, but they had all the positive vibes going in. Then he doesn't end up working out, and then you have the negative vibes. So I'm trying to figure out what changed. And that's why this is all confusing. Was it because maybe the Bills are the favorites to get him? And I guess we'll just have to wait and see for that answer. And
and we can answer that better soon.
And that's the thing that really sucks the most about all of it. We're all speculating, and I am seeing a couple comments about Poyer here. I know I said that if you sign OBJ, you lose Poyer. I think even if the Bills don't sign OBJ, it's going to be tough to bring Poyer back just based on the situation that's going on. Love Poyer. I would love to have him back, but I think there's some bigger things going on that's going to make it difficult to bring him on. I think he wants to be paid like one of the truly elite safeties in football, and I don't believe the Bills want to give him that type of money.
Yeah, and the whole point of signing Odell Beckham Jr. now would be for a discount. The reason that if he can't play, the whole reason is you're getting a discount now on him. You're able to eat some of that money this year, eat one of the years of the deal this year as well. So there's definitely benefits cap related that, we might not overly care about right now as we reach middle of December and we're going for the number 1 seed, but there is chess to be played with your roster. And Brandon Beane's always playing it. It doesn't cost a roster spot. You're going to have him signed up, ready to go. There's a lot of benefit to signing him now. It isn't just like, well, let's wait till March. Well, why? When the cap goes up, he's working out. He's going to get more money. He's going to get a discount now. It's 100% going to get a discount now to sign. Team taking a risk on him now is how you would position that. And then hopefully the benefit there would be you would have him able to play 1 week, 2 weeks, playoffs somewhere in that camp. So, and the Bills, interesting with the receiver room, like it's Gabe Davis. Mike, let's do it right now. It's obviously Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Khalil Shakir. They waived Marquez Stevenson today as a note he'll get claimed because everyone's getting claimed right now. Baker Mayfield going to the Rams. The Giants
the Bills do want to get him on the practice squad, so
they do. But
the Bills are hoping he doesn't get claimed. I don't think he will get claimed.
Okay, it's 50-50. He had that practice squad punt return.
He's too much of he hasn't shown anything offensively in his career, so I don't think Stevenson is going to get claimed. He's primarily a special teams player right now. He's been hurt. I don't think Stevenson is going to get claimed. That's just my take, though.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. The funny part was Isaiah Hodgins gets claimed and is the receiver 2 in New York. I honestly did not would have said the same thing you just said a month plus ago. So I don't expect him to, but with the Giants out there claiming they have Matt Breida on their roster, I expect him to be claimed. So we'll see. I think he will be. I wouldn't. I would assume he goes through to the practice squad. But it's an interesting note that he will be on the practice squad if he goes through waivers. But still only 4 active receivers.
Dude, it's interesting right now. It's Kev, at the beginning of the year, we thought the Bills had a plethora of talent.
7 or 8 of them.
We thought they had too much. That is not the case. It's funny. We were joking about the guys that weren't going to make it. I'm blanking on my mind. The West Virginia receiver that the Bills, Tavon Austin, how he left the Bills because he wasn't going to have opportunities. Tavon Austin probably would be seeing the field now based on the Bills wide receiver situation. And it's difficult. I mean, at least you got a good 1-2 punch. You got one of the best receivers in football in Stephon Diggs. And even though people have been hard on Gabe Davis, he's still producing at a good level for number 2 wide receiver. I think his boomer bust factor is frustrating for fans because he can have a game with 150 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, and then he can follow that up with a game of 2 catches for 20 yards and 2 drops. But as Eric has discussed on the Film Room and his other shows, Gabe Davis is still a top level number 2 in the league. You want a little bit more consistency? That's fine. If you want to ask for him to limit the drops, that's fine. But you compare him to everyone else in his draft class, and he was one of the best wideouts to come out of that class. And there are some big names in that class as well. He is a touchdown machine throughout the course of his career. So I have no issue with Gabe Davis as a 2. What I want is a 3rd target. And
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, if you actually look at Isaiah McKenzie and Dawson Knox, their numbers aren't as bad as what I think many people would think they are. I'm not going to tell you that they're incredible, but just pulling them up right now. Isaiah McKenzie, so far this year, just be 1 second here, has 35 catches for 359 yards. So at the end of the year, Isaiah McKenzie is probably going to have 500 plus yards in 50 receptions. And same with Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox has 33 receptions for 327 yards. So he's going to probably end up right around just under 50 catches for around 470, 480. It's not that those numbers are horrendous. They really aren't. It was just that when you have Cole Beasley and you let him go, a guy that would get over 80 catches and 700 yards, when you would have an Emmanuel Sanders who you knew could have consistent high-end production, and those guys, and Gabe Davis was your number 3 or number 4 receiver, you're not getting as high-end production from your lower level wideouts. They're still producing at an okay rate, but I do think the Bills need another upper echelon third target that they can feel like they can consistently go to in key situations. Cole Beasley was money on third down, just absolute money, where he would find the soft spot in the zone. Josh Allen would find him. 1, 2, 3, boom. They don't have that with Isaiah McKenzie right now. He'll have a game or two where he can explode, but it's not consistent. And then with Dawson Knox, one thing that we've also been talking about with him, it's not necessarily that he's not getting open at times, but the way Josh is going through his progressions this year, he's just not getting the ball to him. Where's tight end priority in this offense with Dorsey? Apparently not where it was under Brian Daboll. So you question why you get all that money, but I don't think it's a factor that Dawson Knox is playing horrible this year. I think it's more so things have changed with this offense.
And will we see Jamison Crowder show back up? I believe you can. I do believe you can. You will maybe see him appear at some point here to end the season. So we'll see where that goes on that injury front. Whew, that's a lot of OBJ talk, man. That's a lot to think about. I do believe that the Bills are very much in the running. They don't waste time in December. They don't spend time hiring private chefs and courting them, hanging out with Josh Allen the whole 9 yards on game weekend for no reason. I do believe that there is some legitimacy to him being ready at some point this year, at the very least toward the end of the season. So we'll see if that amounts to anything. And the news out of Dallas actually gives me hope that he's trying to bash the player almost. Those are really interesting things to say.
It doesn't make sense. It
doesn't add up.
Why would you go from wanting him to then bashing him? Because last thing I'll say,
because you can't pay for the player. You can't afford him.
Because what a lot of people, and talking to my coworkers, they would throw out things like, well, you're trying to lower the price, or you're trying to get bad medicals out there. Here's the thing. The Bills have their own medicals. Like, they don't care what the Dallas Cowboys information is. That won't make an impact on their decision. And it's not going to lower the price because the Bills already have their own price in mind for him. So I don't think it's to change the opinion of the Giants or the Bills. I think it's more to tell your fans, it's not a guarantee he's coming to us.
And John, thank you so much for tuning back in. We always appreciate you, as well as a super chat. Please like and comment. It means so much to us. And we talked to John about this months ago now, as he noted. Month ago, when you guys raised the OBJ possibility, I was against it. Now you've converted me. Go do OBJ. He would feast on number 2 cornerbacks. Davis feasts on cornerback 3. McKenzie plays a gadget role. All wins. That's exactly my point. Was our point. I think Mike's point too, going back when we talked about this in October, when some of this was more realistic at that time, and then obviously growing in popularity to today. I agree. That is exactly the plan. That is kind of what everybody would be thinking. And then you have Khalil Shakir as the 5th guy. That really grows the depth in that wide receiver room. So couldn't agree more that the decision there is that you get him against cornerback. Look at this week. As we tune to the Jets game, let's say he was playing and was healthy enough to play this week. You'd have Sauce Gardner, who doesn't follow a receiver. He was on Gabe Davis the majority of the day. He'd be able to go against OBJ. Now you have an injured Michael Carter in the slot. Are you going to move Gabe Davis in there? Are you going to put OBJ in the slot? He's going against a reserve in Brandon Eccles. And then you have a corner on the other side, DJ Reed, who was in and out of the lineup having to guard Stephon Diggs, where Stephon Diggs was able to win at points in that game against the Jets, including in the deep route over Sauce Gardner to start the game last time that they played. So you look at the mismatches right there, and yes, they have a high-end corner and one that's playing really well, but they just get thin quickly, especially without their slot corner. It becomes a problem for them in this game, as well as missing their safety. Ashton Davis is a pretty good safety, third-round pick a couple of years ago. So to me, if you just look at it in the Jets' perspective, I believe that the Bills would be able to totally control a game when they have one more weapon. We're having trouble scheming the tight end open right now for various reasons. So to me, I think that it's a very nice addition to have on the roster right now, and I think Brandon Beane agrees. And it's just a matter of, can he play December 18th or excuse me, yeah, sure, even against the Dolphins, but more, can he play week 18? Or is he going to be able to make it to the playoffs? Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay money to take that risk. I do believe that Brandon Beane has envisions of just going through this with Trey White, and it's harder on a cornerback, as many of you have already said. And then we can even get on Kyle Trimble, Dr. Kyle from Banged Up Bills as well. If the Odell news is looking like the Bills are likely next week, I promise you we'll have on a doctor on here to kind of give their side of like what the rehab would look like. No reason to go down that right now, but if the Bills are the favorite and or are decided to sign him, we'll jump right in with a emergency injury edition on like when we expect him to play. And after 10 months, it's very realistic. It's no longer like a pipe dream to have a guy off an ACL play. So
it's been a learning experience for me. I'll tell you that. I used to think that 10 months you could return. And I think the recent trend was people starting to return sooner than ever before. You were starting to see 9-10 months. But I learned through the Trey White experience and now this OBJ experience, don't assume the best case scenarios. Assume the worst. And if they return before that, good.
I think that the visit being quiet was a good thing for a Bills perspective on OBJ. And I think that him leaving the way he did from Dallas, great thing. I didn't think he'd get out of that bill. I'm being honest. Jerry came up with some excuses on why he doesn't want to. He wants a sure. I don't blame Jerry for wanting a sure thing, a day one receiver too behind CD Lamb. I get it. Like in theory, Mike, that's what Brandon Beane want. Like, that's the same things. But come on, there is more nuance than that. Like he's coming off of a major injury. He's not, the Bills training facilities are the best in the league. We've been told that. And to me, it's a matter of, yes, it's Buffalo, New York. Yes, you don't think of the dome and the glam and the glitz. They have one of the best rehab facilities and doctors in the league.
I think it's more important for the Bills to get Odell than it is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Based on the way both offenses run, based on what his type of impact would be to both teams, the Bills are an effective running team, but they're effective most of the time running the ball because you have Josh Allen, and he can be a major factor in that. The Cowboys can run the ball. They have Zeke. They have Pollard. CD Lamb is obviously emerging as one of the better receivers in the NFL. They have Michael Gallup. I don't think wide receiver is really a huge issue for Dallas. So yes, they can always get better, and Odell Beckham Jr. would play a role. I think you put a guy like that in Buffalo when he's healthy with a quarterback like Josh Allen, that could be the difference between the Bills being very good and truly elite and unstoppable at times. Those games against the Jets, as you mentioned, how are they going to be able to slow down Odell, Gabe Davis, and Stephon Diggs? Don't see that happening. Did want to quickly get to something quick. Obviously, Greg Thompson with our sponsor. So, Kev, if you're okay, I'm just going to play our quick.
And maybe there's some odds out there for, as we see the odds ever moving in the OBJ situation. So get out there and consider maybe putting your money where your mouth is on the OBJ situation.
Obviously, BetUS is a sponsor for all of Cover One. So Greg's going to have a few words and just listen to this quickly.
Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between 2 exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code COVER1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
Woo! That is some hot fire from Greg Thompson and BetUS. Get out there, bet, have some fun. I enjoy BetUS a lot. I think the John Brown thing is totally independent of everything, Mike. Yeah. I think the John Brown situation, do you have any opinions on John Brown?
I look at John Brown as kind of the short-term solution to what we were just talking about. The Bills only have 4 wide receivers right now. Kumerow's out. Crowder's out. You don't necessarily trust Khalil Shakir in big moments right now. At least that's the vibe I'm getting from the Bills coaching staff. Not that he can't be a good player down the line, but right now as a rookie, they don't want to have to rely on him. I see John Brown as a person that is going to be a short-term fill some space. And then hopefully at the end of the year, they haven't said that Crowder is out for the year yet. So hopefully Crowder is someone that we can eventually see return to the field. I'm not going to count on it, but I look at John Brown as a guy that has familiarity with this organization. Josh Allen, some of the other offensive guys, Dorsey, and it was just easier to bring in a guy that they knew than to bring in a completely different player, teach an offense for a period of 2, 3, 4 games, however many games that they'd actually come up and play in.
I think that's all interesting. And I think that, he's just kind of a practice squad body, kind of took over for Tavon Austin.
Tanner Gentry,
kind of the vet in the room. Yeah, Tanner Gentry can't be elevated again. So I think that there's all of those situations going on. And I really like one point I wanted to get to still in the receiver room. I believe it was John who mentioned the fact of you could go ahead and everyone gets better by putting him in the number 2 receiver room. I also think that means you don't have to address receiver at all. And from there, you can go ahead and draft O-line. I think that that's all. That's all, really good stuff. Went to 4 straight Super Bowls, added James Lofton to the roster. If Bean can make that correct contract make sense for the Bills, he should do his sign it. But yeah, great point, Carl. For sure. Go up there and check out that comment by Carl. I can firmly agree that this could be a move that sets him over the roster over the top, and then you can use your draft resources elsewhere.
It's a great analogy. It's a great one. Yeah. Get a guy 30. Some people are going to give up on him because of the age, because of the injuries. He's still an elite player. The numbers were not there in recent years because he was playing with Baker Mayfield. Has anybody watched Baker Mayfield in the last couple of years? Horrible. And then he went to a solid offense in LA, started producing, and by the time he got to the Super Bowl, he was looking like a top wideout once again. And if he hadn't torn his ACL, I bet you he would have been the Super Bowl MVP last year, and he would have gotten a bag full of money, probably by the Rams in the offseason. So you could say that injury changed the course of his life because now teams are going to be a little bit more cautious how they move forward with him. And I think OBJ, had he not torn his ACL in that Super Bowl, would be playing at an elite level again right now.
Yeah, and RJ as well, coming in and the importance of having a great number 2. And to someone else's point earlier about Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill being the reason Miami is what they are. I firmly agree that without either of them active on a game, whatever game it is, I do not believe they're nearly as good because then you can bracket the other one, take them out of the game. Or let's say you didn't have either. I don't think the team would be good at all. They can't run the ball. So I completely agree that receiver 2 is really important, and that's why Bean's taking it seriously, and that's why the long-term deal could come up. You incorporate him in the offense for a couple of years. You have Diggs signed for a couple of years. You have McKenzie for a couple more. You have Davis for 2. So they're all there. You can go use your draft capital and firmly draft an O-line. It really is an encouraging situation to be able to secure him in your offense for a playoff push and then beyond. That's the idea. I completely agree with the addition of a receiver 2 at value right now could be chess for Brandon Bean.
And it's kind of funny how the Bills have constructed their wide receiver room. The way it currently sits, none of them are high round picks. You look at Stephon Diggs, 5th-round pick. You look at Gabe Davis, 4th-round pick. Isaiah McKenzie, lower-round pick. Khalil Shakir, 5th-round pick. So the guys that the Bills have, they've either been lower-round picks or the Bills have brought them in through trades or free agency. How Brandon Beane first put together a wide receiver room was free agency with guys like Cole Beasley, John Brown. Then he finally made the big trade for Stephon Diggs. So you really haven't seen Brandon Beane be aggressive in the early rounds of the draft when it comes to drafting wideouts. Now, sometimes they can be more of a sure thing than a 3rd or 4th round pick. But with the way colleges are developing wide receivers now, more than ever, you have depth in the draft where in the 3rd, 4th round, you're still getting high quality players that might have been 1st-round picks 10, 15, 20 years ago. So the way the Bills attack it, wouldn't be surprised to see Odell Beckham Jr. Be the move, because that's the way Brandon Beane has been addressing it, through free agency, through trades, and then lower round wide receiver draft picks.
Whew. Well, that is a ton of receiver talk here on the Going Deep podcast, and we're going to transition into a little bit more game day chat here as we kind of await the news from Odell Beckham Jr. And we'll see. I think the Bills are right there. I think that there's just as good of a situation for him to sign in Buffalo than anywhere at this current moment. And I think you could go up to as many as 40 to 45 million on a contract. A lot of it would get eaten out this year, and then you're guaranteeing 12 of it, with between likely and unlikely to earn incentives this year. No, it wouldn't be likely to earn any of them this year. You might be likely to earn some of them next year, but the Bills are able to spread that out over the course of a 3-year deal, maybe put a 4th or 5th void year in there. They would get interesting. And you would originally see like the Bills sign with Odell Beckham Jr., whatever it might be, 4 years, whatever, $60 million or something. But you're going to see a scenario that's going to look way higher than the cap figures would be. So I'm excited to see all of this turnout for the Bills as we kind of go through the final of this push. And it's interesting to have a player of a receiver 2 caliber sitting there able to play, potentially play, we'll say, late in the season. So Mike, we get into the Jets game. We kind of talked about it here and there, in and out. You have a team that ran the ball pretty well. Zach Wilson didn't do too much. Since been benched for a more gunslinger mentality in Mike White. You have, we kind of went through their DVOA metrics, 9th overall right now. We talked about their defense a little bit, 5th overall DVOA defense, 19th offense. So there's definitely some room to grow there for them. Estimated wins, 7 estimated wins. They have 7 wins. So they're playing exactly to their metrics. They're about exactly what their record says they are. There's no real big variance when it comes to the New York Jets. They've had injury problems at the running back position, a position that's pretty room for them. They still turned out an undrafted free agent in Bam Knight, a guy that they really like a lot, that has shown some juice. And obviously Mike White, pretty much looking like it might be over for him last week, but did turn in a 4th quarter that is going to give him the foreseeable future here, playing starting quarterback for the New York Jets. You have a defense that's been very solid across the board. We went through their secondary a little bit, here earlier. You saw Quinnen Williams in and out of the lineup last game as well with a potential injury. So we'll see if any of that plays a role in this game coming up. But it's a game 7-5 versus the Bills 9-3. It's a game where the Bills can really take commanding position on the AFC East. It really is. The Dolphins do not have a gimme against the Chargers and on Sunday Night Football. It is a game where the Bills could be in a really good position going through to their game, and maybe even give them some leverage if something bad was to happen. But you do need to take care of the Jets. You can lose to the Jets and still get this thing. But if the Chargers don't beat the Dolphins and you lose to the Jets, and even if you beat the Dolphins, you need to watch over your shoulder the entire rest of the season, because as Kevin has said before earlier on this show, the Bills do not have the tiebreaker over the Dolphins in any tie situation. And that was locked in by them losing the common opponent's tiebreaker because the Dolphins lost to the 49ers. Therefore, the Bills didn't play the 49ers. So any situation that the teams are tied in, the Dolphins will have a better common opponent's record. The Bills went 3-0 against uncommon teams this season. To kind of explain my tweet earlier, I had a lot of people asking me about this. I want to spend a minute explaining it. 3-0 in uncommon games. They beat the Titans, they beat the Rams, and they beat the Chiefs. All teams the rest of the division didn't play. That's great. That's great. Go 3-0. Some of those are leading their division. However, when you're in a tiebreaker scenario, they take those games out like they didn't happen. The first tiebreaker is an AFC record. It's common opponents record. So you take 3 wins right off the top of your record. The Dolphins are going to go 2-1 in common situation. They're only going to lose 2 wins off the top of their common record scenario, therefore winning the tiebreaker in a tie scenario in common opponents. Pretty easy to follow. That's why people are like, they lost. But when it comes to when you want to lose a game, just like if you're looking at NFC record, if you lose an NFC game in the AFC tiebreaker for the wild card, like we used to care about for the 6th seed or the 7th seed, you go to the AFC record, not the common opponents record. And you're looking, this team only beat a certain amount of AFC teams because the NFC games didn't count when it comes to the tiebreaker. So if a team went 4-0 in the NFC, it would hurt them when they were tied with another AFC opponent. So why does this matter? Why it's all full circle to the Jets game. You need to take care of business. Do we think this team not only goes 5-0 down the stretch, but kind of goes the distance, and you kind of combat that to what they've already been able to do to date in coming off of that Josh Allen injury, really losing a heartbreaker to the Vikings, but then technically winning 8 straight down the stretch. It's conceivable for a team.
Just win one more game.
To go 8-0?
Just win one more game than Miami. You beat them head-to-head. They're going to have to be 2 games better than you in these other 4 games outside.
Well, you got to beat them is the most important thing. You got to beat them. Right?
If the Bills beat Miami head-to-head, Miami will have to have a 4-0 record, and the Bills will have to go 2-2 in the other 4 games. So essentially, you beat Miami head-to-head, you're going to finish ahead of them, because you're not telling me that the Bills are going to go. I don't see them.
You got the Jets, you got the Patriots, and you got the Bengals.
I think I'm pretty confident in the Jets game this week. I'm not going to guarantee it. I don't feel as confident as I did the first time the Bills played the Jets, but I still feel pretty good. And after that Patriots loss recently, I don't know if the Patriots are going to be playing for the playoffs in week 8.
Okay.
So you have Chicago in there. Cincinnati and Miami are the 2 games that I think are going to be the most difficult. You lose to Miami, you're going to have a battle for that division. But I'm not even worried about tiebreakers right now. Take it 1 week at a time and find a way to squeak out that top seed.
If you lose Miami, it's over for you in a lot of ways. They have officially not only the tiebreaker, but they would even up the records. And you would need them to lose a game.
Here's the thing about Miami. Here's the thing about Miami.
Their hardest game is the Bills remaining. And if they beat that.
You know that I saw their success coming before a lot of other people. I was saying all offseason that Tua was someone that needed to be respected, and that with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, he was going to put up incredible numbers. And that's been the case. But when you look at who Tua has been successful against this year, they have been exposing the bottom defenses in the NFL. When they play the top defenses in the NFL, they struggle. And I mean, some of that's common sense. But who does Miami have remaining on their schedule? Let's fast forward past the Chargers. They have the Bills, a top 5 DVOA defense. They have to play the Patriots again. That's a top 5 type.
Well, we just said they're done. We just said they were done, though. We can't make that game harder for them than it is the Bills.
All I'm saying is Miami struggles against the better defenses in the league. Tua
and the Jets.
He's great with the intermediate passes, but you saw against San Francisco when he's getting pressured, he can be prone into making a mistake here or there. And I do respect the Dolphins, but I still don't think they're on the Bills level overall. And I think some of the hype that you're seeing surrounding them at this point from national media and analysts is a little bit premature, because they've been beating up on a lot of subpar defenses. When they play the defenses the caliber of the Bills, you're not seeing those same results. I'm not saying that Tua can't throw for 300 and 2 or 3 touchdowns against the Bills, but it's not going to be a pretty 2 or 3 touchdowns. And more likely it's going to be a 27-24 game than them putting up 35 in crushing.
And to get to this point, obviously, and I think you've made this too, winning out is the best solution, obviously. If you're relying on an 8-0 scenario, winning half the season in a row, that's fine. They will be the 1 seed. There's no reason to talk tiebreakers. You win 8 in a row. You beat some of the better teams in the league. You take care of the Dolphins. Fine. Like, absolutely. That is a situation that gets you the 1 seed. But another situation that you need to talk about is not winning 8 straight. And I think they go 7-1 in they're already 3-0 in it. I think they take care of the Jets. So like, you do have to account, like, you're a Mr. Bengals fan. Like, I do think you have to account for like the fact that you don't just look at the Jets game already. Look at how crazy the Vikings game went. Like, the Bills are the better team in both of those games. They've lost by 8 total points in 3 games. Losses happen. They don't end your season if it's not in the playoffs. It's not a huge deal. So you have to kind of look at it like what will happen in your seeding. Now, what's important about that is that the Dolphins now can knock you not only out of your home game, can put you in the 5 spot to put you on the road in your first game. So, and B, let's just even say in a scenario where you could even be 13-4 in this scenario and have to play in the 5 spot. So you do have to kind of think about, like, do I want them to go 8-0? Yes. Do I think they'll go 8-0? It's possible. Do I think they're more likely 7-1 and to finish the season out? Yes. So you have to actually look at tiebreakers realistically and kind of look at it from a holistic standpoint of, like, the Dolphins have the tiebreaker over the Bills, and you have to have that in the back of your mind. Even beating them, they would. So you need to make sure that you know that, and that Dolphins game is just the regular season game, but it is very, 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 very important to getting the 1 seed, and potentially even not playing in the 5 seed.
So Kevin, it is important to put some numbers on it, because obviously probability, you got the New York Times playoff machine. That's a favorite of mine. I don't know if that's something that you go through, but right now it has the Bills 80% chance of winning the division. Okay. And if I'm thinking about what that model is saying, I believe it's saying the Bills are playing Miami at home. The Bills are favored to beat Miami at home.
And our game up.
If the Dolphins lose that game, it's the Bills' division. Now, what's more interesting is how they look at the round 1 bye. Right now, it has the Bills at a 51% chance for that, and Kansas City at 31%. Now, let's ask, why does it say 51%? That's not saying that the Bills are going to win out. That's one of the possibilities where it thinks the Bills have a chance of winning out. But what that says is they also think there's a chance Kansas City will lose a game that's remaining on their schedule. KC losing to the Chiefs was the KC losing to the Bengals was just absolutely huge. It changes everything. You look at the remaining schedule. The Chiefs don't have that many difficult games left, but is it possible for KC to lose on the road to the Raiders? Is it possible for KC to split a pair with the Denver Broncos? I think those 2 Denver games are mighty intriguing against Kansas City, because Denver this year, they're one of the worst teams in football, but they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. And you're just asking Russell Wilson to have 1 game that he actually looks like the old Russell Wilson against Pat Mahomes. I don't think it's inconceivable that even this crappy version of the Broncos goes out, plays their game of the year, and they upset Kansas City one of these games. I'm not going to pick it either contest, but I do think right now the odds are pointing in the Bills' direction. Cincinnati is shown as a 10% chance for the 1 seed. So really, outside of Kansas City and Cincy, the next 2 highest teams for that round 1 bye are the Dolphins and the Ravens at 4% each. We are getting that point to the season. It's more likely than not that the Bills are going to be the AFC East Division champions or that 1 seed. Yes, they can fall, but if they do fall, you're talking about the 2 or the 3 seed, most likely.
Yeah, and John, condolences to your wife from everyone at Cover One. We appreciate you tuning in and support you in any way possible. And thank you so much for your support here of the Cover One Podcast Network, the Going Deep Podcast. Seriously, we send our condolences to you for your wife. And obviously you have a lot of ties down there to Miami. So really the kindest words that I have imaginable going your way for that scenario. And what a fighter for sure that I'm sure she was. So to kind of talk about the wrapping up the situation of the statistics, right? So Yes, because the Chiefs can lose a game. But I think even more importantly than really like focusing on the Chiefs, because you're right. Like I think that they could lose to the Broncos even in this world. We lost to the Jets. You can lose to, the Raiders. There's a couple situations there. It's not a gimme that we have to go 8-0 to end the year. However, the situation that gets in the way are the Dolphins, right? The Chiefs have no one to worry about. Even if they drop one of those Denver games, they don't have to worry about getting into the tiebreaker or getting into the situation to be in talks for the 1 seed. The Bills do. They have to worry about, the Titans don't really. The Bengals, and I guess the Bengals and the Ravens have a battle going too. But the Bills have a battle with the Dolphins right now in a situation that they need to be really careful with so they don't flirt with the 5 seed. So the numbers are interesting. That the 51% would be a lot higher if the Dolphins weren't there, because
I got a good number for you too. If the Bills win every game outside of the Bengals, they still have a 74% chance of getting the 1 seed.
That's interesting because the Bengals, they were expecting the Bengals to lose because the Bengals would then have the tiebreaker of the Bills.
The Bills can win 4 out of 5, lose to the Bengals, and still have a 74% chance of being the one seed overall. And it's quite simple. Right now, Kansas City is saying the same thing that Bills fans are saying. Same with Cincinnati. They're all saying win out, get that one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like win out, always win out. Go 19-0, go 1,000,000. Like, I think that's always fair to say. But as you kind of break it down analytically, that's not football. It's any given Sunday. The Bills have already lost a sneaky game to the Jets. They didn't spike the ball against the Dolphins in a heat game when missing some players. And they got Justin Jefferson / a crazy affair of fumbles and refs and just a weird game all around against the Vikings. We hope none of that rears its head in 5 weeks. But it very much could, and hopefully the Bills do go 8-0, and I think that they have.
It just sucks. It's coming down to this because
it does suck. But it's because of those games I just mentioned. It's because they couldn't take care of. Let's just one game. Let's say the Viking game still happens, whatever. Jets game happens, whatever. If the Dolphins game doesn't happen, you're in a situation to where this really doesn't matter that much, and then you can be like the Chiefs and drop a game to the Broncos because. Quite frankly, it doesn't overly affect your situation in your season. But to finish up why the Dolphins, and I've seen it a couple times, have the tiebreaker over the Bills, because the Bills would need to lose. So when the Bills lose, that brings their common opponents record down. They're not, if they win out like a million times we've talked about here, they get the tiebreaker and they win the division because they don't need the tiebreaker. If they lose a game, though, that's a common opponent. Let's say the Bengals, that they have that in common. That's a common opponent loss that the Bills then would suffer. Now they're only 1 game up, and then they would obviously have to then go and lose to the Patriots and then lose the division tiebreaker, or they would lose to the Bears the week before, and they'd lose the common opponent's tiebreaker. It's pretty straightforward. So if you beat the Dolphins and you're up 2 games, that requires you to then go lose to the Bengals and then either potentially the Bears or the Patriots, and you lose the tiebreaker in all those situations. That's why that's why the Dolphins would have the tiebreaker in any situation that the teams are tied, not when the Bills are 5-0 and win the division. And of course they don't have the tiebreaker in that situation. In any situation to where you go up 2 games on them after the Dolphins game next week, there's 3 games left. In order for the Dolphins to tie you, though, you'd have to lose to the Bengals and then again to in any situation, either the week before against the Bears or the week after against the Patriots. Then you'd lose the division record if it's the Patriots, or you'd lose the common opponents if it's you go and lose to the Bears. So that would be why. The Dolphins, in any situation, the team's untied, any situation possible, the Dolphins would go ahead and earn the tiebreaker. Can't be tied with them. That starts with beating them next week in Buffalo in a situation I tweeted Saturday Night Football. Weather has seemed to have some snow in the air. Dolphins fans are pretty witty, saying it's going to get moved to Detroit, like they have any idea at all.
They're the worst. They're truly the worst ever.
Like it's remarkable. It's just quite frankly confusing. I
thought I dislike Patriots fans, Miami fans. They find a way to get under your skin like no other, because you can argue sense with them and they just don't understand it half the time.
Yeah, spin. They would have to lose 2 more if the Bills beat the Dolphins. They would need to lose 2 more games to be tied. They're up 2 games in that scenario.
Spin knows what you're talking.
they
Kev's
would need.
assuming with the tiebreaker, the Bills are losing to the Dolphins. If the Bills beat the Dolphins, none of this tiebreaker talk even matters.
Right. And even if they don't lose to the Dolphins, they still don't have the tiebreaker. Even if they beat the Dolphins, they still don't have the tiebreaker. Trust me. Do run permutations on your own. But anyways, as you kind of look forward to this Dolphins game, going forward to next week, we talked about the Jets. We're going to get a score prediction here shortly about the Jets game. Saturday Night Football, crazy atmosphere, going to be wild, so much on the line, could have some weather going on in the system and it going on around the stadium. So that's going to be fun. You're going to have crazy Bills fans. Does Tua have what it takes? Does that team have what it takes going long games, short weeks in California on the West Coast to come into Buffalo with a totally different atmosphere on the road, totally different weather environment? That's going to be a show for the ages next week as we cover this situation and we kind of break down all that has to go to kind of go to that up to that Dolphins game, Mike. But Jets time, it's Jets week. This could put us in a bind by overlooking this game and going to the Dolphins too soon. Let's pick it. Mike, what do you have going on? Do they rebound? Do you like what you see from Mike White? Give us that final score prediction as we look forward to 1 p.m. football, which I don't love anymore, and the New York Jets with Mike White.
First off, what's the line?
The line officially is at, I saw it a couple of different areas, a couple of different places, but I know the over-under is at 44, and the line's 9.5 currently for the Bills.
I'm going to say the Jets keep it under that 9.5. I'll say 24-17 Bills. I don't think the Jets offense is going to be strong this game. I think the Bills at home, they're going to look much better against the Jets rushing attack. I think that caught them by surprise last time. I don't see the Jets being able to run it all over. They have been going to the air more with Mike White. I think that could lead to some interceptions, lead to some takeaways for the Bills defense. Mike White is an upgrade over Zach Wilson, no doubt in my mind. I've watched him. You hear the coaching staff of the Jets say he can make the simple plays, and that is true. He can make the simple plays. But their faith in him also leads him to getting more opportunities to make the bonehead play. Sure, that's something that Zach Wilson does on the regular, but when you throw it 50-plus times like what the Jets did last week, you're going to have some bad ones, especially against this Bills secondary. I don't think the key to beating the Bills is airing it out if you're the Jets. So I also think Josh Allen is going to want some redemption after having one of the worst games of his last couple seasons early in the year against New York. Not throwing a touchdown pass, scoring, 17 points last game. The Bills just couldn't get anything done the last time they played the Jets defense. And I think Josh is going to take a lot of pride in changing that. And the Bills will win, I think, a game that's going to be more comfortable than what my final score will indicate.
Yeah. Okay. As you kind of look at it, the Jets O-line, I see a couple questions about that. The Jets O-line's been in and out. Eric Fisher out of retirement will be starting at tackle for them going forward. That's the Dolphins, but the Jets O-line has had some issues throughout the season. They've lost Vera Tucker. They've lost Obuehi. They've lost Becton. They've been pretty banged up in and out of the rotation. They look pretty bad until the fourth quarter. Again, the Jets just look good in general in the fourth quarter. They look pretty bad prior to that in general. Mike White's PFF is like 73 or something pretty high in his limited action, but it did last year before going into the Buffalo game and looking pretty poor with interceptions. So to me, it's a matter of, does Mike White have what it takes to lead another road victory against a division opponent in up north with a raucous crowd? I don't see it. I think the Bills, you're right. Just like we said about the Packers game when Josh Allen played his previous worst game of his career, Josh Allen's taking this seriously. He's got once and he's at home. I think the Bills do whatever they can to really put this pressure on the Dolphins in the situation to where to make that game a must win if the Dolphins want to win the division. So I think the Bills will take care of business. They'll win another division game, kind of right the ship of previously win 4 straight, go into that Dolphins game pretty hot and really put all the pressure on them to beat the Chargers, and then really need to beat the Bills, because then, as others have said, these tiebreaker scenarios don't matter, because if the Bills then go ahead and beat the Dolphins, it's borderline over. So people are saying like the reason the tiebreakers won't matter because the Dolphins or the Bills won't lose to the Bengals and the Bears or the Patriots. Probably true. But if they do, the Dolphins have the tiebreaker still. So that puts them in a pretty big bind. So it's the Bills want to put the Dolphins in that bind. We saw some lip reading by Stephon Diggs at the end of the last game. Did he say, I want the Dolphins or not? I don't know. Stephon later came out and said he didn't say that. So we don't know actually what he said. And someone had caught a capture of him, and it looked like he could have potentially said, like, bring on the Dolphins explicit in there. So we'll see. I think the Dolphins game is super important to the Bills. That's a playoff game for them, regardless of the tiebreakers or any of this other mumbo jumbo. That game is going to be really important to them. I have the Bills taking care of business 31-13. I don't predict blowouts much. In fact, I'm usually a 1-score game guy because I think it's better for predictions and you're more accurate. But I think the Bills take care of business this week. The Bills totally played Mike White well. They're going to utilize the same game plan. Garrett Wilson might make a catch or two that puts a little pressure on at some points in the game, but I think it's going to be similar to that Browns game without the comeback late on. And I think it's going to be identical without that Browns backdooring a couple 14, 15 points late in that game. That's kind of exactly what I see happening in this game. So I got 31-13 right at the over under, and they're going to cover. So it would be a push on the over under, and it would be a Bills covering the situation. So it's fun, and this whole season is fun. And I love the comment by Roy, you can't take the Bears. I mean, they have a primetime quarterback. We can't just give the Bills 8 wins to end this season. That's why we talk about tiebreaker situations. They go 8-0, none of it matters. So I think that's what's fun about talking about the Bills just in general. Does Mike White get benched again? He had a pretty bad performance against the Bills last season. And I think I've always said Sean McDermott is good against bad quarterbacks. That's what makes Sean McDermott. That's what he kind of feasted on early to get to the stage of the career to where they're beating better quarterbacks. But he lived in that year to break the drought. They just beat bad quarterbacks all the whole time. That's what they do. We got to do it. But generally, you get got by Zach Wilson. The only other time he got was against a good Trevor Lawrence.
Also, having Trey White back in this game is going to be huge.
Yeah, it's a big difference for Garrett Wilson. For sure. Garrett Wilson on full snaps. Yeah, on full snaps. And you're going to have your full defense pretty much back, minus Vaughn, minus Jordan Phillips. So you're going to have a pretty healthy linebacking core that's going to be huge for covering the whole middle of the field, taking away second and third options.
And that's the reason why we have this confidence going into the late run.
The defense is healthy.
The defense is healthy, and this defense, when healthy, is very difficult to go up against. And that's my thought process in these next 2 games, even without Vaughn, because everybody outside of Buffalo is going to mention, oh, they're without Vaughn, what a loss. We know that with Greg Rousseau back, with Boogie Basham in there, Shaq Lawson in there,
AJ Epinesa,
the Bills can get pressure with those guys. They did it last year. With these guys. Obviously, they had Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison in addition to them. But with some of these guys, they were able to get pressure in 2021. The issue was in the big moments against the KCs of the world, they didn't take the quarterback down. But for most part of the season last year, they were up there in the top 15, top 10 in sacks and pressures and stuff like that with some of the guys that are part of this crew right now. So when they go up against Miami, that's going to be the key. Continue to get pressure and then continue to stop the run. You have Groot in the game, one of the best edge defenders stopping the run. Ed Oliver in the game. You have Daquan Jones. I'm going to feel good with a healthy Bills D-line, healthy Bills linebacking core going up against Tua any day of the week, because if they can force him off the mark, if they can force him into 3rd and long situations, I think this defense with a healthy Trey White is going to get stops. If Trey White wasn't back, if Tremaine or Milano were out, if Poyer was out, different story. But you have Tua come up to Buffalo. You have Mike White coming to Buffalo, playing in colder conditions, sometimes windy atmospheres. That's going to get them off their game. Those are guys that need to be at their best when they're going up against the Bills. And if there's things that are going to push them off of it, advantage Buffalo.
And what's interesting, lastly, the Bills are plus 110 in the second and third quarter. Interesting. They're really good in the middle of the game, like the best in the league. That's interesting how good they are. The fourth quarters they're only like plus single digits. I think it's like plus 1. And that's because like they're up big. Yeah, those Lions and the Browns come back. You have the Vikings in
without
there,
even really double dipping much outside of
right.
The one, or I believe it was like once all year that they had a true double dip. So that's some impressive numbers when they're kicking off almost every second half.
Whew. It's interesting. That's what a great 90 minutes. We really, if everyone could smash that like button, that would mean a ton to us. Smash the like button. All of my on-demand listeners on whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you could leave reviews, that would be excellent. We really appreciate it. Going to be back at you with Christmas coming soon, holiday season. Going to do some giveaways here. I already have something in the fold here for giving away maybe a nice autographed photo to somebody listening in as well. I think that would be pretty cool for a Christmas gift for all you guys tuning into this. And I just don't believe the Jets are going to beat the Bills twice. I mean, it's that simple. I feel that way about the Dolphins. And the Bills would be +2 at least the rest of the way. That should be enough, to many people's point, to get this job done without needing to worry about tiebreakers. So that's the world I want to live in, being up 2. And if they lose 2 out of 3 to close this thing out, Mike, they might deserve to be in the 5. If that's how they,
and it still wouldn't be the end of the world.
No, it's not. Going to Tennessee or something. Yeah, it still wouldn't be. They'd be the 4 most likely. So yeah, you'd be going to Tennessee. So even in these like worst case lose the tiebreaker situations, you're going to Tennessee, and that's after losing to like the Bears and the Bengals in back-to-back weeks, and that's you still very much alive to beat the Titans and then be right in the thick of things. Anyways, so we live in a world where we're in a good shape. Let's go up 2 games. Let's start here. Let's hopefully go up 2 games going into the Dolphins game. If they lose to the Chargers, you and beat them
and end them.
You end that. I'll admit, you in that scenario, you do end them up 3 games.
It's possible. I'm going. I don't put money on games, so I'm not going to actually bet money. But if I did, I am going to bet that you see the Bills 2 games ahead of Miami at the end of next weekend. That Chargers team has underperformed the entire year. I can't believe how bad that Chargers team is.
And they need it.
Spotlight game. They can't afford to lose. The Chargers lose that game, their playoff hopes are very slim. Justin Herbert going up against Tua, battle of the number 2 and 3 quarterbacks taken in that draft class. A lot of people thought Herbert should have been the guy that Miami took. I think this is a game where you're going to see Herbert step up to the challenge and possibly have Tua maybe force a few things. Tua's good. Don't get me wrong. But when he's getting pressured, which the Chargers do have the ability to do, could get him off his game a little bit.
You're right. And going up 3 with 3 left, all you need to do is take care of the Bears on Christmas Eve. You take care of the Bears on Christmas Eve, you're like clinched to the 2 seed, and all you're worrying about is making sure you beat the Bengals for 1 seed. But even if you weren't able to do that, life's still good. You'd still probably have a chance at 1 or 2. So, Mike, what an action-packed show. We're going to be back next week, Tuesday at 7:00, talking Dolphins, hopefully with a 2-game lead, hopefully going for that final and 3-game lead as 3 games left in that situation. So from the Going Deep podcast, we're really excited to bring on Jets week and Dolphins week after already taking care of the Patriots. Let's put the Jets, basically put them away to really fringe hopes for themselves. Give a boost to the Chargers, who then go and win and could hop the Jets, then boosting down the Dolphins as well. So Dolphins have to go out west twice, short week, time zones, lots to look forward to in the next week or so. And then wrapping it all up with the OBJ stuff. We'll be back at you. I'm sure we'll have some emergency content, whether it's a Going Deep podcast or somebody else on the Cover One Podcast Network going forward, as we have a multitude of great shows going forward. So there's just going to be a lot to look forward to over the next really 7 to 14 days here. So, and then there's a holiday season. So there's just a ton to going on. So I appreciate everybody tuning in for 96 minutes now from the Going Deep podcast. Kevin Nasseri, Mike Bunt will be back at you as always, 7:00 on Tuesdays on the Cover One Podcast Network, and hopefully with a win and maybe with a new receiver too. So we'll catch you soon. Kevin, Mike, chat with you next week.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.